The snow had hardened overnight, a thin crust that cracked under each step. The dog's breath drifted in short bursts, fading as quickly as it formed. Ahead, the ground bore wide hoofprints, deep and fresh, the kind that left no doubt what passed this way. The men halted without a word. Wind slid over the plain, dry and sharp, carrying the faint scent of pine and frozen soil. One adjusted the sled harness. Another shifted his rifle higher. The leader knelt, tracing the edge of a print with one gloved finger. The shape held clean, no drift yet. The bison was close. He rose slowly, scanning the tree line. Out here, distance lied. What looked near could take an hour to reach. He counted their daylight, the weight of the load, and the fuel left for the stove. The snow swallowed every sound. The only noise left was breath. The camp sat low in the valley, its canvas and rope half buried under snow. Smoke from the stove climbed straight into the gray sky, the air too still to carry it far. Frost sealed the tent seams overnight, turning them hard as bone. The men woke without hurry. One shoveled snow into a pot for water. Another scraped his boots clean with a knife edge. The leader sat close to the stove, slicing dried meat into thin pieces. They chewed slowly, eyes half closed against the cold. Nothing is wasted, not food or movement. When they finished eating, the work began. Rifles cleared, bolts oiled, ropes bent back into shape. A torn glove was wired shut and pulled on again. The cold pressed steadily, not sharp anymore, just a weight that never left. The dogs stayed low near the stove, their fur white with frost. They packed the sled, rope, axe, 3 rifles, spare rounds. The leader made a short walk around the camp, testing the wind with his hand and checking the ridge lines. The sun hung low and weak, unmoving. They drank what warm water was left, packed the stove, and covered the ashes. 10 steps, stop, breathe. Scan, and the rhythm began again. The tundra stretched ahead, white and still. The trail would decide how far they could go. By midday, the light had flattened into a dull gray band. The valley ahead dipped low, scattered with thin birch and knee-deep snow that broke under each step. The sled caught often, dogs pulling hard, their breath rising like smoke. The leader crouched beside the trail. The prints were wide and uneven. The bison had started running. He brushed frost from the edge with one glove. Still soft, less than an hour ahead. The ground turned wet where ice met shallow marsh. Cracks opened under their boots. They spread out, testing with spears, dragging the sled by hand when the surface gave way. A gust turned the wind. The leader caught the sour musk on it and knew the animal would smell them soon. They pressed harder, but when they reached higher ground, the tracks scattered uphill and vanished. The hunt had turned, and the cold followed close behind. Late in the afternoon, they found it again, a dark shape moving slowly near the frozen pond at the base of a ridge. The bison's shoulders rose above the brush, broad and heavy, steam lifting from its nostrils into the cold air. The men crouched behind a stand of willow. The leader lifted a hand, no sound, no movement. Wind held steady behind them. The animal shifted once, showing its flank. He unwrapped the rifle and brushed frost from the sight. The metal felt brittle, every motion deliberate. One round slid into the chamber. The barrel rested across his knee. He waited, steadying his breathing. The animal stepped forward again, slow and certain. He exhaled and squeezed the trigger. The crack rolled flat across the pond. The bison lurched, staggered 2 paces, then dropped heavily to one side. They stayed still until the steam from its nostrils stopped. Then the leader stood, reloaded, and walked ahead, boots crunching through the crusted snow. He circled wide, watching the flank. The animal's eye was dull, the chest still. He lowered the rifle. The others came forward, pulling the sled. No words, the work began. One man cut the neck to drain blood before it froze. Another split the hide along the spine. Steam rose and drifted away in thin ribbons. They worked fast, shoulders, ribs, hind legs. What they couldn't carry would wait for morning. Each cut was clean and sure, blades darkening with frost and blood. When the light began to fade, they covered the remains with snow to keep the meat from freezing too hard overnight. The leader wiped his knife on his sleeve, looked once toward the ridge, and turned back toward camp. The cold deepened behind them, closing the valley in silence. Night had settled by the time they reached camp. The cold was deeper now, the kind that dulled sound and stiffened breath before it left the mouth. Frost had already grown along the sled ropes. The dogs dropped beside the tents, sides rising slow, fur white with rime. The men worked without talking. One stacked wood, another hauled meat from the sled, laying it in neat rows outside the shelter. The leader checked each cut, brushing off ice, turning it once in his hands. Nothing wasted, bone, hide, sinew all accounted for. Inside, the stove burned low, the metal ticking as it warmed. They boiled scraps with snowmelt and drank the broth from tin cups. It was thin, metallic, but warm. The smell of blood and smoke filled the tent. Outside, a dog shifted in its sleep, the harness creaking faintly when the meal was gone. They hung their clothes near the stove to dry. Meltwater pattered onto the floor. One man lit a cigarette, the paper crackling in the heat. The leader tied a broken strap, his hands slow but steady, beyond the canvas. The plane was silent again. The firelight reached only a few meters before the dark took it. Somewhere past that edge lay what remained of the bison, already buried beneath a new layer of snow. Morning came without color. The wind had worked through the night, smoothing every track until the valley looked untouched. The men rose stiff from cold sleep. The stove was dead, the air inside colder than outside. They packed in silence, ropes coiled. Rifles checked, sleds lined toward the east. The leader paused once, looking toward the ridge. The place of the kill was gone, hidden under a clean sheet of snow. Only a shallow dip showed where the ground had sunk. Soon that too would fade. He gave a short nod and stepped forward. The sled runners carved new grooves across the crust, each one filling with fine snow behind them. The plain ahead offered nothing, no promise, no warning. Just the long pull home, snow cracked beneath their boots. Steady and measured, a single trail across white ground, leading back toward what would keep them alive.